think we're rolling.
All right. We actually got out of here in less than an hour last time, Julie. And that might happen tonight, except I might find some way to stall just so that I'm around you longer.
You could keep her after class.
I could keep her full time and she could be my kept woman.
Okay, well, that's what you need. That's mine. This is what you need.
Okay, okay.
It's just me with a kept woman. I have a hard time spending more than an hour with anybody because I want to be alone all the time. All right. The first thing that we're looking at here is we're looking at Mercury in Aries in the 5th, and it's square to Uranus in Capricorn in the 2nd, and it's also square to, oops, I made a mistake here. It's actually supposed to be square to Neptune in the 8th. Oh, great error. I hope anybody didn't.
That's the first one?
Wait,
Yeah.
square Saturn in Cancer, but square Neptune?
Square Neptune in Cancer, yes. There is, you can add on the end if you like, there's actually even a sextile to Jupiter in the 8th, in Gemini in the 8th. If you wanted to have written more complicated sentences or more different sentences.
Okay, you said
All right, it is Mercury in Aries in the 5th house. And it is square to Uranus in Capricorn in the 2nd house. It is also square to Neptune in Cancer in the 8th house. And it is also sextile to Jupiter in Gemini in the 8th house. The sextile is the weakest aspect. All right. Anybody have a sentence they want to start off and offer right up? No, we need Abby back. She's the only one that's been daring enough to write a sentence. You have one? All right. My sentence reads, I am daring and I am a daring and even speculative thinker, and I express my mental creations in unorthodox and iconoclastic forms and materials. And there is always a sense of something strange and hidden which seems to disappear. The daring, obviously, is Mercury in Aries. The speculative thinker is Mercury in the 5th house, which is the house of speculation. Mental creations, we're talking about Mercury and Uranus as mental creations, and even Mercury in the 5th house is create mental creations. Unorthodox is an afflicted Uranus. And iconoclastic is an afflicted Uranus. Forms and materials, we're talking about the 2nd house. And there's always a hint of something strange. The strangeness is Neptune, and the hidden quality is the 8th house, and things that are there and then disappear is Neptune. Hope it all makes sense. You can see how it's really simple. All right. I can engineer and entertain theatrically, even though the things that I construct are confused and illogical. Aries is the engineering sign, and entertainment and theatrical things are the 5th house. Even though the things that I construct, the constructions are the squares. Confused is Neptune, and illogical is Uranus. All kinds of unexpected, seemingly irrational things there. You can see this was somebody born around the time of the First World War. So does anybody have any guesses about this? Since it's Mercury, I tried as much as possible to work with people that deal with either literature or voice or something like that. Does anybody have any guesses whose horoscope this is from?
I have a question.
Yes.
How can you have Mercury squared,
Or-
what is it in the?
Uranus and Neptune
No. Neptune in Cancer,
in
the 8th house.
yep.
And have a
Mer-
sextile in the 8th house as well.
Because it's probably somebody that was born pretty far north, like say Ireland. And then the houses get pinched and expanded.
Huh. No, no idea.
It's Abby. Hooray, hooray. We're all cheering for you. We're all happy to see you.
I wonder you here. I gotta give you my phone number so you can call me.
Julie should surely be able to guess who this is. We'll just read the first sentence and who comes to mind from Ireland? A writer.
Dylan Thomas?
No?
James Joyce?
What? No?
Strange and hidden, which seems to disappear.
How about Waiting for Godot?
This is Beckett.
Yes. Isn't it a perfect, isn't it a perfect description? I'll pass out the names later on.
Oh, okay.
All right. As soon as Abby is ready and gets out her 50 sentences, and boy, do you look fresh and bright from cycling. You got the pinkiness, and you're almost as pretty as the apples I eat in the morning.
Careful.
It's windy out there.
What?
It's windy out there.
Yes, it is. You ready? Well, let's see. Mark, would you give her one of the sentences sheets? We are on number 2. We're looking at Mercury in Taurus in the first, conjoined the Sun in Taurus in the first, and square to the Moon in Leo in the 5th. Fairly simple combination, not very pleasant, but I did it just to pick on her.
Is there a sheet that has these?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me see.
Probably here.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
No, that's not it there.
I can probably look on it. That's the rest of.
Is that the same thing?
Yes.
All right.
Thank
Good.
you.
All right. My thoughts are at one with my self-image, and both are externalized for the world to see. And there is some tendency to try to overpower in objectifying performances. All right. My thoughts are Mercury. At one with the self-image means that Mercury and the Sun are in a conjunction. And both are externalized because there's the first house is externalization and the 5th house is expressions of externalization. So it's all out there for the world to see. And there is some tendency to try to overpower, where am I? I lost myself here, in objectifying performances. The overpowering is the Pluto part of it. This is like, by golly, I'm going to make the performance to end all performances even if I have to overwhelm my audience. And the objectification is the Taurus part. It's objectifying things for the world. And performance is obviously the 5th house. Theatrical performances and things like that. Abby, what do you have?
Okay. My mind is focused on my environment and I like things to be steady and comprehensive. I do have a very bright and expressive side, though it is sometimes hard to see. I use my fiery will to create stability and security, a pleasing, harmonious environment that lasts.
Wow, stupendous. Sounds very good. It describes her in some ways. I might try to solve impossible problems with my mind and may doggedly build elaborate rationalizations and complicated structures to appear generous. Solving impossible problems is Mercury square Pluto. Mercury square Pluto likes to confound itself, and Pluto gives you impossible kinds of situations. Mercury square Pluto very often is the ultimate impossibility that we know in physical conditions. It is what is associated with ALS, when the nerves become so that you cannot move at all and you just have to sit there and think, and you have to open up your mind because the way you've been thinking doesn't do it for you. The doggedly is the squares, which are permanent, and they're all in fixed signs. Elaborate rationalizations are the compounding of things with the moon and Pluto, trying to rationalize this and this and this, and the Mercury in an earth sign like Taurus is complicated, and the structures, Mercury in squares is more likely to produce rationalizations than Mercury in oppositions, for example. It has that structural quality to the square. To appear generous, this is trying to give the appearances rather than the reality. You have any more, Abby? Anybody else have anything? Next week you'll have about 5 or 6, I'm sure. Anybody have any guesses who it is?
What'd she do?
She's a singer. A singer who was generous if Bill Clinton slept with her.
Okay, Barbara Streisand.
Barbara Streisand, yeah. Not one of my favorite people in the world.
I had a hint when you snickered there for a little bit.
Yeah, there are times when you have to deal with people that you don't like. Even if they have talent, you just don't like them. And the next sentence is another such a case. We have Mercury in Gemini in the 9th house, a real simple combination this time, sextile to Venus in Libra, Venus in Leo, and the 11th house. And we have a male this time. Abby, why don't you lead it off for us?
I'm a very mental person, and my beliefs are constructed through my thoughts on everything. I share my thoughts with all my friends. I love to talk about what's going on in the world, and my big heart has room to treasure diverse points of view.
Excellent. All of it is true except the last part of the sentence. It's true to his life. But that's because of other things. It's not necessarily because of this sextile. See, you have only limited information yet. I haven't trusted you with a full horoscope. That comes next year if we get that far along. My sentence reads, my mind is light, versatile, and quick, applied to philosophy and religion, which reflects into persuading my friends and associates successfully. The mind is obviously Mercury. Light, quick, and versatile, Gemini. Applied to philosophy and religion, the 9th house. Just as simple as can be. And it reflects sextile into persuading. Venus and Mercury puts love together with thought, and it's very persuasive. Friends and associates are the 11th house. Successfully, meaning it's a positive aspect. The second sentence reads, I try to synthesize thoughts and emotions and seek to expand into a compelling utopia, but the purview might prove so broad that my shallow mind might take it simplistically. I had to take a jab in there, you know. The synthesis comes from the sextile. And thoughts are Mercury and emotions are Venus. Moon would be the same thing. So he's trying to put together thoughts and emotions and seeks to expand. The expansiveness, again, is the sextile. Even Leo is expansive. Into a compelling utopia. The compelling is the leonine part, and utopia is the 11th house. Leo likes to command, and if it were possible to command a utopia, it would. But the purview, which is looking from the top down, from the 9th house up there, right near, almost conjunct the midheaven, might prove so broad, again the sextile, the broadness, that my shallow mind, Mercury in Gemini, is not particularly deep. You don't to be a newspaper person, which this person is not, that it might take it simplistically, and this person does have a rather simplistic view of life. It's a movie star.
John Travolta?
No,
Tom Cruise?
Tom Cruise.
I was going to say either John Travolta or Tom Cruise because I know you.
But it perfectly describes his life.
Tom, when you
He's
said-
got a talent, he's got a winning way, you can't help but like him except when he gets out.
When you said religion, and the first thing I thought, Tom Cruise.
Yeah, okay, see.
Venus in Leo.
Yes.
Oh,
He
because
has Scorpio rising too.
No, Virgo rising.
Tom Cruise?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In fact, the sextile between Venus and Mercury is almost exact. It's less than a degree. It's less than half a degree. So it's a strong thing. You have to, you could say that because it's the 11th house is theatrical also. But the 5th house, when you are theatrical with the 5th house, you make the role yourself. That's sort of like John Wayne. John Wayne only played one character. He played himself. Richard Burton was an 11th house actor because he in fact said it on purpose that he went into acting so he wouldn't have to be in himself all the time, and he could be somebody else without the world knowing him for what he really was, which made him fantastically intriguing to Elizabeth Taylor, who is not as stupid as she seems to be. She's got a reasonable amount of intelligence. All right. Number 4. Mercury in Cancer in the 9th sextile, Neptune in Virgo and the 11th. And it's also sextile to Saturn conjoined Uranus in Taurus and the 7th house. This person with a lot of positivity. My mind is inclined toward domestic or nurturing philosophy, which I diversify with stolid practicality that is so grounded that it seems eccentric and even faddish. This is somebody that's so much in the boat that they seem out. I worked with a man like that he was so rigorously with the world that he was an oddball. You know what I mean? His name was George, and he was in things. He did tested scientific apparatus. This is not George Ott I'm talking about. This is a different man. He tested scientific apparatus. He worked for a testing house where companies, something like Underwriter's Laboratory, where companies would bring their products to the lab and he would test them for safety and strength and things like that. And that's what the Uranus conjoined Saturn is in this horoscope. My mind is inclined toward domestic or nurturing philosophy. The domesticity and the nurture are obviously Cancer. And the philosophy is the 9th house. The diversification comes from the sextile. And the stolid practicality is clearly Saturn in Taurus. That is so grounded, Taurus is by far the most grounded of all the earth signs, that it seems eccentric. And that is where the Uranus comes in. and even fattish. You know, you can dress so much to a T that you seem strange and different, or, you know, stand out. Abby, what do you have for us?
I think introspection is key to personal growth and development, and through nurturing my understanding of things, I can let go of what doesn't matter in order to transcend limiting thought forms. Through discipline, I can expand my intuitive mentality to be in sync with my ponderous creativity, which I would like to share.
Excellent. Very, very excellent. All perfectly keyworded, and to some extent it describes this person, though I don't know some of the things that you spoke about. The second sentence in the samples is, I show genius in both inventiveness and uncanny tuning in on things for my associates and partners, so that I might even seem like a religious guru to people.
Martha Stewart?
Yep. Yeah.
How old is she?
She's not very old, 1941, which would make her...
Venus and Taurus?
Yes. It's that same conjunction that produced Bob Dylan, only I think she's a year older than Bob Dylan. All right. The genius, both Uranus and Neptune are planets of genius. The inventiveness is the Uranus part, but the uncanny tuning in is the Neptune part. The associates is the 11th house, and the 7th house is the partners. So I might even seem like a religious guru to people. Maybe she really did guess that stock. She's uncanny enough to do it, and maybe she was a scapegoat that didn't.
Token woman.
The what?
A token woman.
Yes.
Stock market criminal.
Yes. And because she was small, she didn't get away with it.
That's right.
All right. Now we have a more historical horoscope. We have Mercury in Leo in the 3rd house, opposite Neptune in Uranus, Neptune in Aquarius in the 9th house, and it's trying to Pluto in Aries in the 11th house. And I don't think you'll find many Pluto and Aries people around. I've never worked with a Pluto and Aries person personally. I think I might live long enough to have worked with Neptune in every sign of the zodiac. I've already done it with Uranus. All right. My concrete mind is naturally inclined to be practical and transient, but there may be some confusion or outright dishonesty or moral misrepresentation, to say the least. The Mercury is the concrete mind, and being naturally inclined to be practical and passing or transient is where it's in its 3rd house, where it likes to be. But there may be some confusion, this is the opposite of the Neptune, or outright dishonesty, where there is falsification, or moral misrepresentation, to say the least. We're talking about moral misrepresentation is a way to say criminal tendencies. Abby, do you have one?
I only have more for 12.
Okay. The second sentence reads, with bold but stable associates, I can be successful in my questionable schemes involving transportation and communication, long and short. All right, pretty obvious. Bold but stable associates would be Pluto in Aries in the 11th house. I can be successful, meaning to say there's a sextile and trine to that Pluto in Aries in the 11th house. Questionable schemes would be the Mercury opposite Neptune, is a scheming kind of thing, involving transportation and communication, which would be the 3rd especially, but also the 9th for long trips, so for long and short. Does it all make sense? Can you see where the keywords are all coming from? Have I told you how I do this? I take that whole counter out in front, and I take all the pages that apply to a horoscope and I have them all in front of me. And then I look at the combination, and then I go look at each of those things and just put together the sentences that way to make sure that I'm doing them not from my own memory of things, but so that I'm using the same keywords that you're doing. It might even be worthwhile if you want to take the book and make Xerox copies of all of the pages of keywords, and then you can do the same thing yourself. You could actually set them on the floor in a semicircle or something like that, and just go right around them and just pick one out right after another, and you'd have a sentence by the time you were done. And then, what you're doing now is just an exercise. Just like in the piano, you have exercises to get the fingers to move certain ways so that when you play something that you're ready for that. When you start working with a horoscope, then you have to discriminate. You have to intuitively discriminate whether the sentence that you have made applies to the situation that you have to deal with. And so then, because the sentence has to come to reality. So this is an exercise which is altogether different than an actual application. Anybody have any guesses who this is?
Not Bell, is it?
No?
Yeah, some kind of entrepreneur, dicey entrepreneur type.
No?
No? Questionable schemes.
Yes. Actually, you could say that it was not only his associates, but his brother that he worked together with in his questionable schemes. What? Yes, you have it. Jesse James. See, all you have to do is trust your intuition. I had a friend that used to make funny folk songs about Jesse. He had one called Jesse James, and in it Jesse James was a homosexual, and it started out, Frank and Jesse James were fruits. They wore pink cowboy boots. And there was always a punchline at the end of every verse. And one of them, Frank yells to Jesse, "Get off the railroad tracks! You're going to get blown off!" And he goes, "Come on, shoot, shoot!" Yeah.
It's for the tape, right?
These are never going to be on television anyway. It's much too tedious for what the public would stand for. It was somebody, yeah, nobody wants to learn astrology that much. All right. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? The people who really want to are the people who show up in the classroom, but the people who are just doing it because it's something entertaining on television, they don't want to learn something. This is fun. I don't blame them. Television is more, for most people, an entertainment than it is an educational medium. All right, we have Mercury in Virgo. Very simple combination again. Mercury in Virgo and the 7th house, and it's conjoined to Saturn in Virgo and the 7th house. My mind has excellent pinpoint focus and accuracy, and I pay great attention to detail, even to the degree of being tedious in public display or things done for others. The excellent focus is the Saturn conjoined Mercury. And it's excellent not only because of the conjunction, it is so because Mercury is at home. It's in the sign where it is both ruler and exalted. It's one of those few cases, in fact, the only case that is that way. And so you can see that this is a very good pinpoint focus, and it's likely to accuracy because it is focused so well. I pay great attention to detail. That's what Saturn is, tends to be, very insecure about things, and it makes sure that everything is taken care of. Saturn is detailed, Mercury in Virgo is detailed, Virgo is detailed, even to the degree of being tedious, because this is a somewhat tedious combination. Public display or things done for others is the 7th house. And the second sentence reads, time, oh, the Y is not supposed to be on the factor. Time or age is a factor in my mental development. So discrimination, method, and definition in the fine arts or in feedback from alter egos is mentally important. Time or age means Saturn is involved in the mental development, because Saturn always slows down mental development, but it makes sure that the developments come. Discrimination, Saturn and Mercury and Virgo are all discriminating. Method is Virgo, and definition is Saturn and Mercury. It is to take a thought and to make it definitive so that it is it and nothing else, so that's real clear. In fine arts, which is the 7th house, or feedback, which is the 7th house, from alter egos, which is the 7th house, is mentally important. So this is where the mind becomes strong, and where it develops over time through those kinds of activities and in the action of feedback and such. Now, I'd think only Judith or Mark would probably know who this person is.
What was he? Or what
It was,
did he do?
what was she? She was an artist. So famous, because Saturn rules the ascendant, person becomes well known. What?
Grandma Moses?
Yep. So see, this is what you expect from a class. Almost everyone tonight has been guessed. And that's what, because that's what you expect with intuition. You expect people to be able to guess things. Yes.
Say about the ascendant?
Saturn rules the ascendant, so that's something that's going to be out there for the world to see.
So if Saturn rules the ascendant,
Yeah. Now, I was just before you raised your hand, I was going to go into something
that's
else.
often a sign of success.
What?
That's often a sign of success.
No, it's a sign that they're out for the world to see.
They're out for the world.
It doesn't have to be necessarily in the 10th house. The ascendant can do the same thing. We're talking, there are famous stories in history, not necessarily having to do with astrology. There is one that has to do with physiognomy. It's the only rare book that I own. I own a copy from the 17th century from Lavater, who was a physiognomist. And he was so accurate that this is what actually happened. Somebody came to him and he said, "Who am I?" And Lavater said, "Well, you're a mental person and you're a verbal person," and described all kinds of things. And the man says, "Yes, you are. You are correct." And then, but he said, "But who am I?" And so Lavater looks at him and studies him even more. And he says even more things in greater detail about the man's life. And the man says, "Everything you have said is perfectly correct, but who am I?" And so Lavater looks at him and looks at him and looks at him, and then he makes some discriminations even further, and he says, "You must write like this and this and this, and I think you're the person who wrote this book, which I just read recently." And the man said, "You are right." He knew who it was just by looking at his face without having ever seen him before. There are all kinds of interesting physiognomy is all kind of, like a lot of artists studied physiognomy. In the Italian Renaissance, especially, all the artists. In fact, there are Leonardo things where he shows the snarl of a human and the snarl of a tiger, and he shows that there are similarities in the lines of the face that they make when they're making a snarling expression. But there's a case of a man whose friend came to visit him, and they talked and talked, and the man said, well, I have to go. I have an appointment. I have to go. And the guy in the counter, whoever it was that he was visiting, said, no, stay for a while. And he says, no, I have to go. I have to go. The count walked over to the door and bolted the door shut. He says, you're not leaving. He says, you have lines in your face and in your expressions right now that are only in a man's face if he is about to murder or assassinate someone. And it turned out that the man confessed that he was part of a conspiracy to assassinate someone, and he would certainly have been caught if he had done it. And so all sorts of remarkable things. So you can get more out of the history of art than just looking at pictures.
Well, how do you spell that guy's name, Lavater?
What? L-A-V-A-T-E-R. I think it was Johann Christian Lavater. I'm not certain about that. All right. After that little exegesis, we are ready to get back to things again. We are at number 7. We're at the halfway point. Mercury in Libra and the 10th, square to Mars in Cancer in the 8th, and square to Saturn in Capricorn and the 2nd. Woo, one of those hard news people here. Obviously, Mercury's right near the cusp of the 11th house for Jerry, who will be wondering about how this is physically possible. All right. My mind is lyrical and artistic enough to become famous or professionally proficient in its focus. And its focus, can be built or developed through careful objectification, which might mean blocked or limited finances. We're looking only at one part of it in that sentence. We're not looking at the whole pattern. But if I were Abby, I would look at the whole pattern and I'd string together a whole bunch of sentences to do it. She's got the sense of it. She's already anticipating the way things are going to be going in the future. The mind is lyrical. Libra is lyrical. Libra is artistic. And it is enough that way to become famous in the 10th house or professionally proficient, meaning to say that she can do what she does. And its focus, here we're talking about the Saturn part, can be developed through careful objectification. The careful objectification is Saturn in the 2nd house, and Saturn's in its own sign, so that's even more tending toward carefulness, which might mean blocked or limited finances. The blocking comes from the square, and Saturn comes from the limitations. All right. It is also a mind that can be energetic and vigorous by trying himself through harsh emotional conditions so that he may seem demanding in a building activity which is always a work in progress. Again, when we see the word mind, we're talking about Mercury. Energetic and vigorous is the Mars. And he tries himself, or he tests or he measures himself, all with the square. Harsh emotional circumstances is Mars in Cancer, so that he may seem demanding. Mercury square Mars is demanding, and the square is the building activity, which is always a work in progress, meaning to say that the square is never lets go, it hangs on. Nobody will guess this one. It is a famous musician that has performed twice in Madison in the last 5 years. Obviously, he's an older person.
A jazz musician?
Yep.
Guitarist?
Nope.
Oh, no.
Somebody who at one time in his life when he was going through some of those turbulent periods that he couldn't do things, went out on the street. And this is a man that had already been famous for 20 years, nationally famous. He went out and played as a street musician in the subways in New York. Any guesses? Somebody who's sweet and furious at the same time.
Saxophone?
Yep. It's Sonny Rollins. All right. This time we have something that is very complicated. Mercury is in Scorpio and the first house. It conjoins the ascendant, and it's sextile to Saturn, conjoined Mars in Virgo and the 10th house, and it's square to Neptune in Leo in the 9th house, and it's trine to Pluto in Cancer in the 8th house. No one will ever know who this person is, so I don't even try guessing. I'm the only person that probably knows this person. I like the person immensely. The person is no longer alive, died within the last month. All right. This is a mind which is complicated with many aspects to it. Boom. Obviously, we don't even, the aspects in here, I'm using aspects as in the language, not necessarily as used in astrology. It's a mind that's got many different sides to it. It's complicated. Scorpio is complicated. All right. It gives an outward appearance of being provocative and tantalizing and desire-filled, while simultaneously branching out into societal standards in ways which are both hot and cold and always verbal, and which has confusing spirit-like intimations of some higher purpose or ideal of life. And beyond this, there is a mental steadfastness which seems to get behind the appearances things to serious, even grave thoughts which are transformative. That's a sentence. All right. Gives the outward appearance of being. That is Mercury conjoined the ascendants. This always deals with the outward appearances. Provocative, tantalizing, and desire-filled is Mercury in Scorpio. And always verbal, meaning to say this is a person that's always going to be talkative, even though they might be, even though they might be scorpionic. Branching out, simultaneously branching out, the branching out is the sextile. It is reflecting into other things, into social standards. The standards is the 10th house. Social standards is the 10th house. Societal standards is the 10th house. And when Saturn is in the 10th house, it tends to be associated with standards. And it branches out in ways that are both hot and cold. Meaning to say this is somebody that in the mind can keep the cool while at the same time having a fervent quality to it. Keep your cool, that kind of a thing. You got all the zest, but you're keeping your cool at the same time. And always verbal, meaning to say the Virgo kicks back in this sextile to Mercury, which is where the perpetual verbal quality comes from, but which has confusing spiritual intimations, because Mercury is square to Neptune. There's a likely to some kind of confusion, and the spiritual intimations would be from the 9th house. Like there is some higher purpose here, or there is some kind of ideal way of life that is both hot and cool at the same time. But yet beyond all of this, there is a stability to the mind which comes from Pluto trine Mercury, which holds it steady, and it sort of like comes from a hidden place behind the scenes, so that the person has very serious, and grave thoughts that are transformative because the 8th house is transformative. All right, anybody have any guesses?
Well, was he a writer or?
It's a she.
Huh?
It's a she.
Oh, it's a she.
It's another jazz person, but in this case, a singer that I don't think any of you would know, except unless you read the obits in the newspapers recently. It is Anita O'Day. What I should have done, if I really were giving only one course, what I should have done was take a clip from one of her songs and then play it back, which shows exactly this kind of, like she had the ultimate cool kind of thing, but like cool jazz, but at the same time it was very robust. And she, you know how jazz singers often try to be vampy, and she was certainly that kind of a person, and so there used to be in her day what was called a groovy way of life. And that's what the Neptune from the 9th house is a groovy way of life. Underneath it, seriousness, real seriousness. All right. This is the one you have words for, Abby? No, not until 12, not until the last one, okay. This is a mind which has a religious or moral quality, but it is also influenced by prestige and honors of the world, and in his building for upward mobility and the good life, he and his partner might become mentally intoxicated. Oh, there's an extra intoxicated in there. And he might become deliriously rash and mentally macho, erring for the world to see. All right? Religious or moral quality, when you hear the word quality in a sentence by me, it always means you're talking about the sign. So the mind has a quality that's religious and moral. But it is also influenced by prestige and honors of the world, which is the 10th house. So that whole first phrase is describing Mercury in Sagittarius in the 10th house. In his building, squares, for upward mobility would be Mercury in the 9th house. The good life would be the Mercury square Mars. Yeah, he's looking to have a good way of life for himself. He and his partner, we're looking now at the Neptune in the 7th house, might become mentally intoxication. Intoxication is a Neptune keyword, and mentally intoxicated rather than emotionally intoxicated would be Mercury square Neptune. And he might become deliriously rash, pointing back to the Mars in the 1st house. Mars in Cancer also often has a delirious rash quality about it, and mentally macho. Mercury square Mars is a mental macho, and since it's a square, there is a lot of erring, and it's all out there because it's both in the 10th house and the 1st house. Oh, I left an E out of the C. Gonna have to get an editor for myself, one that sits on my lap, of course. If he is willing to accept little wealth and live a simple life, he can be mentally penetrating. I cut it short because I didn't want to take up too much space. If he's willing to accept little wealth, which would be Saturn in the 2nd house, and live a simple life. Aries likes things simple. He can be mentally penetrating. You could say that he could be true and honest and overcome all those tendencies to intoxicated dishonesty. Anybody have any guesses who this is?
What did he do? Not a preacher, is he?
Yes.
Billy Graham?
No.
Jerry Falwell?
No. Who had the scandal for all the world to see with his partner? Jim Baker. He got carried away with the world. And it's just so fantastic how clearly obvious the astrology of it all is.
So the 10th and the 1st, you can't get away with hiding.
Yes, says she with Scorpio rising, who would just as soon get away with hiding everything.
Secrets can't keep.
All right. We're going along nicely. It's going to be under an hour again, but that's all right. We are at number 10, aren't we?
10.
All right, number 10 is Mercury in Capricorn in the 4th house, conjunct to Saturn in Capricorn in the 4th house, and sextile to Venus in Pisces in the 5th house. That's a mistake. It's supposed to be the 6th house. Sorry about that. And square to Neptune in Aries and the 7th house. The strongest, the squares, the sextiles with with Venus are almost exact, as is the square with Neptune. So this is something a really strong, pronounced tendency. Yes, you might be the only one who gets this one.
It must be literary.
It must be literary.
Literary, though.
This mind is accurately attuned to the subconscious, whence it derives penetrating observations about the ways and methods of love. All right? That's just one part of it. The mind with Mercury conjoined Saturn is accurate, very well focused, and it's in the 4th house, I mean. So it penetrates into the subconscious, where it derives penetrating observations about the ways and methods of love. The love part is obviously Venus, and the ways and methods are the 6th house. So I got the sentence right, even if I didn't get the description of the sentence right. Because it is so limited, worldly, and subjective, it may be very depressive about partnership, despite her expansive reflections about love and its ongoing activities. That sentence tells you exactly it could only be one person in the history of literature. Because it's so limited, we're talking about the conjunction being so exact, and because it is so Saturnian from both the sign and the planet, worldly because of the earthy sign of it, and subjective, which is the 4th house. It may be depressive, which is Mercury and Saturn square to Neptune is almost always depressive. About partnership, which is the 7th house, and that she might be depressive despite her expansive. The expansiveness is the Jupiterian quality of Pisces and the sextile. Reflections is the sextile about love, and the ongoing activities is the 6th house. Any guesses? Julie, it's up to you. We're depending on your intuition. Mon chéri. Mon chéri. That's your hint.
Oh, is it really? What's her name?
One name.
Yes.
Colette.
Thank you. Didn't even give me enough time.
Yeah. Isn't that
Chloe.
Isn't that a perfect example of her right? Colette was a woman who grew up on a farm, and she writes wonderful things about her childhood experience on the farm. And she grows up to be very, very sensitive and very astute about social interactions. And her famous book is called Chérie, which actually there was son of Cheri and grandson of Cheri. And in that, it's the story of a worldly wise woman who is clever and still has all of her feminine wiles about her, even in her middle age. And she traps a young man who is handsome and has him as her boy toy. And because she knows all of the clever ins and outs of how relationships work and how love affairs works, she keeps him, he just doesn't sleep with her and then forget her. She knows how to keep him trapped until finally she feels compassion about him, and in that feels very bad about the whole nature of partnership and having people trapped in relationships, and she sort of lets him go. I think it's in the third book, I think, that she lets him go or something like that.
It's been a while since I've read those.
What?
It's been a while since I've read those.
Yeah.
Like
Very bright lady.
15 or 20 years, yeah.
All right, we're coming near to where Abby's going to help me out and give us the real poop here. Oh, next one is, I like Colette a lot, even though I don't like all of that earthiness of hers. You know, she writes, do you ever read her books on cheese and on wine? She's got real long essays on the different kinds of French cheeses that there are, and then there's another real long thing on the different kinds of wine, and she is very poetic about all of them, and I can't handle all of that. That's just not my cup of tea. All right, we're looking at this time Mercury in Aquarius, and it's in the 11th house, and it's conjunct to the Sun, and it's trine to Jupiter in Gemini, and it's square to Neptune in Scorpio. Oh, I should really need in Scorpio in the 7th house. Ooh, naughty, naughty. Everybody should probably know this one, and if you don't, you should.
Square or trine to Scorpio in the 7th house?
Square. All right. This mind is clear, bright, open. There's a comma missing there. It breathes knowledge. He is everybody's friend in spirit and in worldly circumstance, and he is capable of communicating his cheery positivity with great dexterity. Clear. Mercury in an air sign is always clear. It's also bright, all because of the airy sign and because of the sun. And it breathes knowledge. Aquarius is that sign that has all kinds of knowledge. It doesn't necessarily have to be pedantic knowledge, because it certainly isn't for this person pedantic in the least. He's everybody's friend in spirit, which means that the Sun and Mercury are in Aquarius, the sign of the spirit of friendship, and in worldly circumstance, which means the 11th house, which is the worldly circumstance through which it works out. And he is capable of communicating, 3rd house and Gemini, his cheery positivity. This is the trine to Jupiter. With dexterity, meaning to say he's got all kinds of ways to do it, and he can bounce around quite well with them. Everybody knows who it is already. You know, huh?
Dick Cheney.
No?
Funny.
Friends aren't always good partners, so he may have mistaken notions fixed in his mind that make marriage problematic. Period missing. Boy, I need to really do some editing here. Friends aren't always good partners, meaning to say that there is a square between the 11th house and the 7th house, intimating that he may spend too much time with his friends and have that kind of consciousness and not be a good partner. See, he may have mistaken notions. Neptune square Mercury is misunderstandings or misnotion fixed in his mind, because they're fixed signs, not easy to break, and squares are not easy to break. that make his marriage problematic, meaning to say that the square means that the marriage will probably not be successful. He's not known necessarily for his marriage problems, but if you know him, you can see why he would have marriage problems. Anybody have any guesses? He now has his own television show. Everybody loves him.
Right?
Raymond.
No?
Shame, I don't know. David.
Mark knows. No? Geez, you were on a roll last time. You got a whole bunch of them. It's Chris Rock.
Oh.
Yeah, you see what I mean? He's everybody's friend, even the hoodlums, and you know, he can say bad things about the hoodlums, and they love him because he's so observant about it all.
He's marriage problem.
All right, Abby, we'll let you lead off on number. Let me see what it is first. It's Neptune, it's Mercury in Pisces and the 8th, conjunct to Venus in Pisces and the 8th, in square to Saturn in Sagittarius and the 4th.
Alright. I have an intuitive way of looking at things and finding their true meaning. My mind and heart are focused on subtle transitions and soulful transformations. And I don't know about this last part, but it's hard to stay disciplined and build lasting ties.
All right. Yeah, that's questionable. It could be, it could not work. It's on the edge. But all the rest is very accurate to the individual. Very accurate to the individual. This mind drinks deep draughts of fantastic nectar from some unseen source in her being, and then she attempts to verbalize mysteries. Obviously, we're talking about a poet here, which gave me the chance to try to be poetic in the sentences. The mind is Mercury. Drinking deep, meaning to say that it's in a watery sign. It drinks deep draughts because Saturn is involved. Fantastic nectar is Venus in Pisces. From some unseen source, it's in the 8th house, in her being, meaning to say it's in herself. And she attempts to verbalize mysteries because both the 4th and the 8th houses are houses of mystery. All right. You got any more, Abby?
Nope.
Okay. Perhaps limitation in her home life or with her father have built a soulful tinge into her poetic way of thinking, and the cup of sorrow is beautifully intoxicating, but probably not pleasant. Limitations, Saturn, especially in an affliction. Home life is the 4th house, or with her father, 4th house. Built a soulful tinge, the building is the square. The soulful tinge is the sorrow that comes to it. Into her poetic way of thinking, that's obviously the Mercury and Venus in Pisces is a poetic way of thinking. And the cup of, there's a "the" missing, the cup of sorrow, which is the whole square dark thing, is beautifully intoxicating, indicating the Mercury-Venus in Pisces being intoxicated because inflicted, but probably not pleasant, meaning to say that there's a lot of sadness and unpleasantness. All right, it describes someone's poetry pretty well. In fact, I'm surprised that she has as much positive poetry as she does when looking at the chart. Any guesses? Contemporary, alive, I think was poet laureate for a while, I'm not sure. But she did have her poetry read at an inauguration of a president. Maya Angelou, yes. Very, very soulful. Okay, well, almost exactly 1 hour.
And the soulful has to do with
The square in the Pisces, yes.
10 to 8?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
All right, these are the list of the people we have just looked at and the assignment for next time.
You have the horoscopes there?
I have the horoscopes, but I can't pass them all out.
That's fine. But I want to look at them.
Yes. The reason I can't pass them out is because I'm under contract about how many I can pass out at a given time. I'm even under contract about how many I can show, and I'm a little too lax on that even.
What's
I
the
want
rotten
to
rating?
see that square between the 11th and the...
R-O-D-E-N.
Oh, what's the rotten rating?
What? Roden is the person who started what is called Astro Data Bank. And she insists that anybody that uses any of her data uses the rating system. AA means that you have either a witness or somebody right there. X, if there's something that's rated X, it's pretty unsure. DD is a dirty data. It's not necessarily reliable data. A is pretty good data, but not ironclad, and B is it's data that you're sure that you've got the right day, but not necessarily that you have the right minute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, it's accuracy
Yes, the accuracy of the data.
of the data.
I have clashed swords with Lois Roden.
Okay. I would imagine you have.
She's no longer alive. She was a rather touchy kind of person, very crabby. And while she was a good person for getting the data, she was a terrible astrologer. I would have been ashamed to have published the stuff that she published. Yeah, everybody, the sentences that Abby has done with keywords are more accurate than what she published in magazine articles. Abby, you're going to be rich and famous. Except that you're not going to use the money, we hope.
Okay, so this is, and then